Digital.
And welcome to Music 101. Music 101 is created to empower music itself, and legendary icon in the music industry. Another week, another great episode on Music 101. Mr. Mick, stars, stripes, and string, how patriotic music defines America's 4th of July celebration.
Yeah, that's what it is today. And I was going to say something about Canada as well, but I think we missed it. So I'm all ready for next year. But yeah, this one is going to be out of America because we're coming up on the 4th. That'll be next week, X. So stars, stripes, and strings, how patriotic music defines America's 4th of July celebration. So if we wanted to start somewhere, I thought, okay, well, let's start with the obvious question, at least to me. Why does James Brown's America is My Home feel like a defining patriotic song? Well, absolutely. It's the summer of 1968, and that's actually a time we considered in a previous episode because 1968 was a phenomenal year. America was on fire, literally and figuratively. Cities burned, hearts ached, and the nation reeled from the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The war in Vietnam raged on. Young men were being drafted by the thousands. And at home, the civil rights movement was colliding with grooving sense of disillusionment. We also had Bobby Kennedy assassinated well. Amid all of this, James Brown, the godfather of soul, released a song that no one quite expected, and that is America is My Home. It was all funky, but JB worked hard and never rested on his laurels. Still wasn't a typical Soul Brother number one tune. It was more of a spoken word statement of pride in his country, laid over a simmering groove, a monologue. In it, Brown didn't dodge the truth. He offered a deep message. If the foreign enemy ever came, we'd stand together because, in his words, black and white, they may fight, but if the enemy comes, we'll get together and run him out of sight. It was a testament to the patriotism of James, whose song just months later might be misinterpreted as simply pride in color. That was Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, a fiery anthem of American self determination. But in the lyrics, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, JB even alludes to the gospel hymn, I've been buked and I've been scorned by Mahalia Jackson from the March on Washington in 1963. Brown explains the chorus as wrapped up in the traditional American aspirations for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you look closely at the lyrics and listen closely, you can hear it in that song because it really does have a patriotic theme. James was describing personal autonomy for himself as he lived, but more importantly, to inspire his fans and young Americans. The song is about owning yourself, your career, and your education. Personal self determination meant affirming loyalty to a country that permits and encourages life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Brown didn't fit neatly into anyone's narrative, and that year he publicly endorsed Richard Nixon for the presidency. Brown was a businessman, a showman, a patriot, and a cultural upstart all at once. With the tune, he wasn't just making a song, he was making a statement. Brown used his voice to say something bold. I believe he was refusing to give up on the idea of America. In the days after King's assassination, this is absolutely key. It was Brown who helped prevent riots in Boston simply by going on stage and speaking directly to the people. He had a desire to unify, to stabilize, to remind everyone that home is still America. The song remains a powerful piece of musical history, a moment when a man known for making people dance paused to ask them to listen and believe. Because sometimes patriotism isn't loud or flag waving, it's sometimes bold, complicated, and deeply personal, just like James Brown. The song's power lay in its refusal to apologize for the American dream. What made this era so remarkable was that artists like Dylan, Cash, and the countless others discovered that questioning American institutions could itself be a patriotic act. They expanded what patriotism could mean. It wasn't just flag waving anymore, it was acclaiming America living up to its highest ideals. In conclusion, artists were loving America enough to fight for its soul.
And thank you for loving America indeed. 4th of July. And let's have a big, big applause. Mr. Mick, before we dive, what about the songs that mention the 4th of July? Did artists write about Independence Day itself?
Well, at one time, Fourth of July songs were blatantly patriotic, such as Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa. On the other hand, back in the day, the most powerful patriotic music of the 1960s was less explicit. Our upbringing was patriotic, but tempered by political reality. Later, artists like Charlie Daniels began weaving explicitly Fourth of July imagery again into their narratives. Several Charlie Daniels songs could qualify as Fourth of July material. In America, this is Charlie Daniels' most famous patriotic anthem and a staple for Independence Day celebrations. The song celebrates American unity and resilience with its memorable chorus about sticking together. In America is consistently featured on 4th of July and patriotic playlists because of its rousing celebration of the American spirit and unity. While it was written in response to what was happening politically and overseas, challenges like the Iran hostage crisis, its themes of national pride and solidarity make it perfect for Independence Day celebrations. The song's appeal for 4th of July comes from its upbeat tempo, singable chorus, and celebrations of diverse Americans coming together. Cowboys and hippies and rebels and Yanks, which appears the inclusive and captures that inclusive patriotic spirit many people want to celebrate on Independence Day. Charlie Daniels became one of country music's go to artists for patriotic material, and in America in particular has remained a 4th of July favorite over 4 decades since its 1980 release. My Beautiful America is first rate as well. The song is emotional, touching, and hits home for me personally because it lists events and experiences all over America, and I've been fortunate to have traveled all 50 states, and most of what he describes I've experienced. So I get to relive good times. Then there's Let Freedom Ring and Freedom and Justice for all by the Charlie Daniels Band, which appears on patriotic playlists. And of course, the genius of soul, Ray Charles, really contributed one of his finest renditions of the classic 4th of July song, America the Beautiful. Absolutely terrific song. In conclusion, some artists like Charlie and Ray brought back explicit tributes to America and took the lead on the 4th of July theme.
Mr. Mick, how did the post war optimism of the 1950s shape the patriotic music of the decade?
The 1950s caused a perfect storm for patriotic music. Post war economic boom, suburban expansion, Cold War tensions, and the emergence of mass media all aligned to create an unprecedented wave of patriotic expression. Artists were creating a distinctive sound that celebrated prosperity, technological progress, and national confidence. This era's music reflected the country's emergence as a global superpower and the widespread appreciation of American exceptionalism. The decade's patriotic music was characterized by several key themes that directly reflected post war optimism. Songs celebrated America's role as a world leader, emphasized suburban prosperity and the American dream, and showcased technological achievements like space exploration. The music often featured upbeat tempos, orchestral arrangements, and lyrics that painted an idealized picture of American life. Songs like This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie, which guardedly optimistic about an earlier period, gained renewed popularity in the 1950s through Pete Seeger as it captured the expansive spirit of the time. Originally, the Woody version was an economic lament during bad times and Great Depression. The song's celebration of America's natural beauty and accessibility resonated with the decade's optimistic worldview. Irving Berlin's God Bless America, though written in 1918 and revised in 1938, became a defining anthem of 1950s patriotism. Kate Smith's powerful renditions during this decade transformed it into an unofficial national anthem that embodied the era's confidence and gratitude. The Ballad of Davy Crockett, 1954, exemplified the decade's fascination with frontier mythology and American exceptionalism. Fess Parker had the biggest hit with the Ballad of Davy Crockett in 1955. Parker, who also starred as Davy Crockett in the Disney television series, reached #1 on the Billboard charts with the song. While other artists like Bill Hayes also recorded popular versions around the same time, Parker's version was the most commercially successful, largely due to his association with the Disney Davy Crockett craze that swept the nation in the mid 1950s. The song's massive popularity, sparked by the Disney television series or even the Mickey Mouse Club intro, reflected the era's desire to celebrate American ideals. Similarly, Western themed shows contributed to the celebration of American frontier values. Gunsmoke would be an excellent example. Running from 1955 to 1975, it was the longest running Western series and deeply embodied themes of justice, individual responsibility, and community building on the frontier. The show's protagonist, Marshal Matt Dillon, represented the ideal of law and order in the untamed West, often having to make difficult moral decisions that reflected American values of fairness and doing what's right even when it's hard. The series consistently portrayed individual courage in the face of lawlessness, community cooperation, and mutual aid, a struggle between civilization and wilderness, and justice prevailing through personal integrity rather than just institutionalized power. Bonanza would be another strong contender as a patriotic song, as it ran for 14 years, 1959 to 1973, and portrayed a family working together to build something lasting on the Nevada territory. The influence of the West during the Civil War, during the Cold War, cannot be understated. Songs like the Battle Hymn of the Republic experienced revivals as America positioned itself as defender of freedom against communism. Americans saw their country as good versus evil. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir reached number 13 on Billboard's Hot 100 chart in 1959. Their recording became their only top 40 hit on the Billboard chart. Artists like Tennessee Ernie Ford, with songs like 16 Tons, while addressing working class concerns, ultimately reinforced themes of American resilience and opportunity that fit the optimistic narrative. The decade's patriotic music served as both a reflection and reinforcement of post war confidence. Country music led this charge, but not in the way you might expect. Artists like Hank Williams didn't craft obvious flag waving anthems. However, his son did. Hank Williams Jr. has recorded several patriotic songs that would be perfect for Independence Day celebrations. For example, he wrote and performed America Will Survive. Chuck Berry stands out as having recorded Back in the USA, which is one of the few genuinely patriotic songs from the early rock era. The song expressed appreciation for America after returning from overseas travel. The folk revival that began in the late 1950s introduced something new, patriotic music that encouraged American ideals to be lived out. Artists like Pete Seeger, who popularized This Land Is Your Land again for a new audience, and the Weavers created music that was simultaneously loving and critical, inspiring Americans as they lived up to their highest ideals. Seeger was one of the folk singers responsible for popularizing the spiritual We Shall Overcome, which became the acknowledged anthem of the civil rights movement. The folk revival rescued and reinterpreted traditional songs, giving them new relevance. We Shall Overcome became a patriotic anthem through its association with the civil rights movement, even though it started as a gospel song. If I Had a Hammer was co written by Pete Seeger, and this became both a folk standard and a song embraced for those seeking to build a better America. Folk artists established what I call patriotic protest, the idea that the most patriotic thing you could do was to inspire Americans to create a better society. Television played a huge role. The Ed Sullivan Show performances reached millions of families simultaneously, creating shared cultural experiences around patriotic music that hadn't existed before mass media. One specific artist performed on The Ed Sullivan Show, Leon Bibb, a Tony nominated actor and folk singer who grew up under segregation, found mainstream favor on The Ed Sullivan Show. Leon Bibb definitively performed Sinnerman on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1959, a spiritual with implicit freedom and redemption themes that align with the struggle for justice. Bibb is the clearest example of a folk singer who successfully crossed over to the mainstream television appearances as urging Americans to view justice as an American theme on The Ed Sullivan Show during this era. The Ed Sullivan Show featured at least two confirmed patriotic songs during the 1950s and 60s: God Bless America by Kate Smith and Yankee Doodle Dandy and You're a Grand Old Flag by Joel Gray, both celebrated for evoking American pride and history. In conclusion, artists perform certain songs as unofficial national anthems while giving artists national platforms for patriotic expression.
Well, thank you for that songs of the 1950s. Then Mr. Mick 1960s came and everything got complicated. How did musicians handle expressing patriotism during such a turbulent decade?
The 1960s presented American musicians with an unprecedented challenge. How do you express love of country when the country seems to be falling apart? The result was the most complex and contradictory body of patriotic music in American history. You had Bob Dylan asking fundamental questions about American justice in Blowin' in the Wind while positioning social change as fundamentally American in the times they are a changin'. Dylan demonstrated that questioning American institutions wasn't anti American, it was inspiring to lead Americans as the country lived up to its founding promises. Country music largely maintained its traditional patriotic stance, but even conservative artists began grappling with changing realities. Merle Haggard's Okie from Muskogee is often misunderstood. It wasn't just conservative backlash. It was a complex view of American identity that acknowledged class and regional differences within patriotic expression. Haggard was essentially saying, this is how we express patriotism in our community, and that's valid too. The emergence of protest music created new categories of patriotic expression. Song like Buffalo Springfield's For What It's Worth and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's Ohio weren't traditionally patriotic, but they expressed deep concern for American democracy and aspirations for justice. A rocking version of Ohio is actually by the Limeys Mott the Hoople, fronted by a guy I know fairly well, Ian Hunter. These songs represented patriotism's highest aspirations, the belief that America is good but could be made better. In decades' end, the definition of patriotism had expanded dramatically. In conclusion, criticizing foreign policy, achieving racial equality, and promoting justice had all been established as legitimate forms of patriotic expression, a legacy that continues.
A legacy indeed, and thank you so much for that legacy, people of the 1960s. Geography seems to play a huge role in how different regions express patriotism through music. Can you break that down, Mr. Mike?
Absolutely. American patriotic music was never monolithic because America itself isn't monolithic. Different regions created distinct patriotic musical cultures that reflected their unique histories, economies, and social structures. The American West provided endless material for patriotic expression through its frontier mythology. Country and folk artists celebrated the cowboy spirit, gold rush adventures, and westward expansion as they praised America. They embodied American values of independence, opportunity, and individual freedom. The West represented America's future possibilities. A good example is from Johnny Cash and Sweet Betsy from Pike. A mainstream pop version of Sweet Betsy from Pike is the rendition by Iggy Pop featured on the soundtrack for The Lone Ranger Wanted 2013. Unlike traditional folk versions by artists like Burl Ives or Johnny Cash, Iggy Pop's take infuses the gold rush era ballad with a modern pop infused energy, incorporating a lively arrangement with its cinematic flair suitable for a mainstream audience. The song retains its narrative of Betsy and Ike's pioneer journey, but it's polished with contemporary production, making it accessible to pop listeners while preserving its Western spirit. The South faced unique challenges, especially during the Civil Rights era. Southern musicians had to navigate between regional pride and national criticism. Johnny Cash mastered this balance by focusing on working class Southern experiences that transcended racial divisions while avoiding explicitly political statements. But Cash, the man in black, born of Arkansas soil, steps into the fray with Ragged Old Flag, a song that feels like a 4th of July story told around a flickering fire. She's been through the fire before, he says, and I believe she can take a whole lot more. The words land like truth, simple and unyielding, honoring the grit of folks who keep going no matter the odds. It's not a glossy anthem. It's raw, like the callous hands he celebrates. By the time Cash confesses, I'm mighty proud of that rugged old flag. You feel it too, a quiet, shared pride in a nation that endures because its people do. Released in 1974, Ragged Old Flag climbed to number 31 on country charts, but its reach stretched far beyond. Urban America found its voice through soul and R&B emerging from Detroit, Philadelphia, and Memphis. Motown created implicitly patriotic music by celebrating American success stories. Their artists' rise from poverty to stardom embodied the American dream, overcoming adversity. Marvin Gaye's What's Going On 1971 is a powerful Motown classic that captured an explicitly in patriotic spirit, and I appreciate the chance to pivot to this iconic track. Gaye's soulful masterpiece weaves a deeper, more reflective narrative of America, one that confronts its struggles while celebrating the resilience and hope of its people, especially Americans rising from adversity. It's a song that embodies the American dream not through glamour, but through raw honesty, making it a profound example of Motown's ability to craft music that feels patriotic by holding a mirror to the nation's soul. When producer Barry Gordy initially resisted, calling it too political, Gaye stood firm, even threatening to leave the label. Released in 71, the single soared to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, proving America was ready to listen. The song's patriotism lies in its unflinching love for what America could be. Gaye, a man who clawed his way from Washington, D.C.'s slums to stardom, knew the American dream's promise and its betrayals. He says, "Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying, mourning war and division, while brother, brother, we don't need to escalate." Calls for peace across racial and social lines. It's not a protest song that points fingers, it's a prayer for unity, rooted in the working class experience, yet universal enough to resonate with all Americans. By addressing Vietnam, urban decay, and inequality, Gay celebrates the nation's potential to overcome adversity, much like his rise from poverty to global icon. In a nation grappling with civil rights and war, the song's plea for talking to each other was a quiet rebellion, showing that love for country could mean demanding it live up to its dreams. This is Motown at its most patriotic, not waving flags, but lifting voices. Gay's journey from hardship to triumph, channeled through a song that dares to question and heal, mirrors the nation's struggle to rise above its flaws. It's the American dream sang with soul, proving that even in pain, there's hope for a better tomorrow. That's the patriotism Motown stirred. Barry Gordy's formula was brilliant: create music so undeniably American that it demanded full inclusion in American identity. Motown rightly branded itself as the sound of young America. The folk revival drew heavily on regional traditions, preserving and reinterpreting songs from different parts of America. This musical archaeology revealed patriotic expressions' deep roots while adapting traditional themes for contemporary audiences. You could hear Appalachian ballads, Western work songs, and urban blues all contributing to Americans' patriotic musical vocabulary. The folk revival of the 1950s and 60s was a vibrant excavation of America's musical roots, pulling from all parts of the country. Fourth of July song that captures this spirit, distinct from Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land, is My Country 'Tis of Thee, also known as America, particularly in its folk revival renditions by artists like Pete Seeger of the 1960s. Folk rockers David Crosby and Graham Nash recorded My Country 'Tis of Thee. While the song's origins predate the revival, its interpretation during this era breathed new life into its patriotic core, blending regional traditions with a contemporary call for unity. The song's regional roots shine through. Its imagery of vales and hills recalls Appalachian storytelling, while its pioneer spirit mirrors anthems of journey and hope. Regional radio stations were crucial. They created local patriotic traditions that reflected their community's values. Country stations in the South and West, folk venues in college towns, and R&B stations in urban areas each developed distinct patriotic cultures while remaining recognizably American. The interstate highway system, expanded during the 50s and 60s, enabled greater musical cross pollination. Folk artists up with people traveled, and I saw them as a kid. They performed The Ride of Paul Revere. In conclusion, musicians could tour more extensively, exposing different regions to varied patriotic expressions while maintaining their regional identities.
Mr. Mick, can you address a big hit that is often misinterpreted as a patriotic song?
Sure, this is pretty common. And one of the most well known songs that is often misinterpreted as patriotic is, of course, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. The chorus simply repeats, Born in the USA, sounding patriotic, but the song is criticizing the treatment of Vietnam vets. So I suppose in some ways it's patriotic, but it's asking America to do better. In conclusion, the lyrics make it clear what the song is actually about.
Yes, indeed. So, Mr. Mick, to sum up, looking back, what's the lasting legacy of American patriotic music?
Well, I hope that people from all over the world would get on the peace train and would be inspired by the aspirations of America. Get on the peace train, tell all the people all over the world, and referencing places like England, China, and Africa. The song is Love Train by the OJs, released in 1972. This Philly soul classic, written by Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, perfectly fits the soul genre and the folk revival spirit of adapting regional traditions for a broader, unifying message, making it an ideal 4th of July anthem, which is call for global unity and love. Picture Philadelphia's Sigma Sound Studios. I had an opportunity to visit this shrine at one time, where the smooth grooves of MFSB's mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers, of course from Philly, horns and strings back the OJ soaring harmonies. The song's lyrics, people all over the world, join hands, start a love train, echo the soulful optimism of the era, urging unity across borders. Specific lines like the next stop that we make will be England. Tell all the folks in Russia and China too, and all you brothers over in Africa. Tell all the folks in Egypt and Israel too, directly align with naming global places and a vision of harmony. And obviously, it's just as relevant today as when it was first released. When it was released amid Vietnam War's end and the civil rights struggle, Love Train hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and R&B charts, its infectious rhythm and message resonating with all audiences. The revival drew from America's regional roots, Appalachian ballads, Western work songs, urban blues, and Love Train channels this by blending soul's urban pulse with a universal call for togetherness, much like a modern spiritual. Its train imagery recalls folk anthems like This Train is Bound for Glory, but its polished Philly soul sound with gospel tinged vocals adapts the tradition for a 1970s audience hungry for hope. The song's patriotic undertone lies in its celebration of America's potential to lead with love, reflecting the nation's diverse voices while avoiding divisive politics. It's a 4th of July anthem that feels like a block party, inviting everyone to dance toward a better world. Lee Greenwood makes it easy to celebrate. I'm proud to be an American. We're a deeply flawed country, but we aspire to be greater and better. I hope that American artists' messages translate and inspire others to achieve the ordinary things that all people hope for: peace, community, and unity. The complex relationship between protests and patriotism established precedents that remain relevant during contemporary political tensions. Artists today can look to musicians like James Brown, Bob Dylan, and Ian Hunter for examples of maintaining patriotic sentiment while feeling free to criticize American policies and institutions. The Limey, though transplanted to America for decades, is singer songwriter Ian Hunter, who critiques the elites in their three-piece suits while favoring the ordinary Americans described as Frankie and Johnny, while searching for what he calls in the song of the same name, Soul of America. More information about Hunter's songs is in my On Track Ian Hunter. The fireworks may fade and the barbecues may end, but the music endures, carrying forward the dreams, disputes, and declaration of independence that continue defining the American experience. In the end, perhaps that's the most patriotic legacy: music that keeps democracy's conversation alive, generation after generation, beat by beat, note by note, voice by voice. Since we started with Soul Brother number 1, let's end the celebration of America with JB as well with Living in America. James Brown, the godfather of soul, caps our patriotic journey with Living in America from 1985, a funky, high energy anthem that pulses with pride for the American dream. From his roots in Georgia's poverty to global stardom, Brown's gritty vocals and horn driven groove celebrate the nation's highways, cities, and promise of opportunity, making it a 4th of July explosion. In conclusion, featured in Rocky IV, the song's unapologetic optimism, superhighways, coast to coast, just easy to get anywhere, unites listeners across divides, embodying America's spirit of resilience and hustle.
Yes, indeed. Let's celebrate American patriotic music. And thank you so much for your legacy to the world. Stars, stripes, and strings. How patriotic music defines Americans' 4th of July celebrations captures the powerful role music plays in shaping national identity and collective pride. Mr. Mig, would you like to plug in something?
Sure, if you don't mind, the Doctor of Digital podcast, of course, a couple volumes on Amazon. That's Burning America and also On Track. Ian Hunter, I'm the Idea to Author Coach. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. Find me on School. That's SKOOL. If you want writing tips and more books, more ideas, I'm the person. Reach out. We can chat.
Yes, people like about Mr. Mig because if you support him, more and more empowering others to come, more and more empowering books to come. And please do listen to our baby podcast, Mental Health 101. Mental Health 101 is created to empower our mental health awareness. So, Mr. Mig, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my friend, Mr. Daniel. Until next time, day is full.
More to come, people. See you soon.